Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Professor Bob White. It's indeed my pleasure to welcome you to the 70th Conference Senior Engineering Design Projects. Today is another in a long line of projects that go back many years where we've been hosting senior engineering project presentations. And we're very pleased that you're here with us this morning. We welcome our people that are able to participate with us virtually. We're also very happy that you're able to join with us. I think you'll be very impressed the projects that you see presented this morning, the professionalism and how these students came to us as freshmen, a little apprehensive, have matured into capable, competent, almost engineers. One of the real joys of being a professor and a faculty member is being able to watch students grow and mature as they go through our program. And I think you'll see that evident this morning. We also like to extend a welcome to faculty members that are here. We have several. We have Professor Wells, we have Professor Burns, we have Professor Hammond, we have Professor Schwartz, we have, missing anybody, Professor Fredericks in the back. We have the Dean with us at the moment, Professor Steve Budd. Steve, thank you for being here. We have Professor Hoshiar. We also have the sponsor, Matt Cavalli, in the back. And we have several advisory committee members with us this morning. Very pleased that you could be here as well. The presentation this morning is Revitalization of Parkview Study Areas, presented by Sophia Ehlers and Carly Moon.
Welcome, everybody. Our project today is Parkview Study Area Revitalization. I'm Carly Moon, and this is my partner, Sophia Ehlers. We are industrial engineering students here at the College of Engineering. So here's an overview of what we plan on covering today. We plan on walking you through our introduction, our project plan, some background in research, our preliminary data, layout designs, our results, which helped us develop our optimized layout and budget before we answer any questions that you may have at the end. Our faculty advisors are Ms. Dana Hammond and Dr. Jim Burns, and our industry sponsor is Dr. Matthew Cavalli. Our sponsor is Western Michigan University, or more specifically, the Parkview Campus, which is the engineering campus that we are currently in. Some background on the campus is that it's a 343,000 square foot building. It was opened in 2003. Since it's opened, there have been minimal updates made to the campus, but we do have some key features, which is that it has 8 study lounges, a computer lab, and 5 breakout rooms. On the right, you can see a graph that shows you the undergraduate enrollment level for this campus. You can see a recent decline, which we believe is due to the pandemic. This is a decline that has been experienced not only in our campus, but in campuses across Michigan. And due to the fact that the pandemic is getting a bit more under control recently, we are expecting to see some projected growth in the coming years. So on the right here, you can see the east wing of the campus. In this campus, in that part of the campus, this is the area in which we are changing the study lounges. As I stated before, there are 8 study lounges throughout the entire campus, 4 in the east wing, 4 in the west wing. But we are just going to change the 4 in the east wing. This is because this is where the industrial engineering department is, as well as the fact that we wanted to be able to make some comparisons between the east and west wing. So we chose to just do the one side. So the problem that we plan on identifying and addressing throughout this project is that the needs of the students at the current Parkview campus are not being met. So some things that we have found through some initial surveying and data collection is that 78% of the students said that they preferred a workstation that had a chair and table combination. Currently, only about 38% of the workstations in the Parkview campus are that combination of the table and chair. And then 90% of students have reported that if changes were made to the spaces, that they would indeed use the spaces more. And we found that so far, best practices have not been being followed. So this is a photo of the initial upper level layout. And this is one of the layouts that were in the east wing. So you may be able to identify some initial issues yourself here. When we were doing our research, we found that issues kept coming down to 2 things: space and comfort. And so we found that the space that has been provided to the students is not conducive to their learning. they are not able to use the space provided to be able to have the area that they need to be able to work through their homework or just have an area that is comfortable to them. This is a photo of one of the lower level layouts in the East Wing. Again, you might be able to notice some initial issues yourself here, but we kept finding that, as we kind of stated before, that the students were not having the workstations that they were wanting to be able to use while using the study areas. We found that most of the students preferred a rectangular chair and table combination, and a majority of the students also find that they have to rearrange the furniture to be able to get the desired workstations that they want while using the study areas. Our objective of this project is to be able to create study spaces that will meet the physiological and academic needs of the students. We wanted to address the student needs. To help us determine what these student needs are, we did a fishbone diagram. This was able to help us determine what issues we currently have, as well as what of those issues are actually feeding into our main problem. So the student needs that we found were that the students need more seating and workstations, ergonomic and flexible workstations, need-based study zones, private breakout rooms, as well as printing stations and outlets. This is an overview of the project plan that we followed. We followed the engineering design process. So these are the steps that we used to follow that helped us guide through our project as we progressed.
So we identified the need to implement ergonomic furniture into these layout designs, mostly because we know adding ergonomic furniture will decrease fatigue of students, increase productivity, and hopefully prevent injury. We identified that several ergonomic principles were being violated in the current study areas, including no padding or armrests on the chairs, and that the height of the chairs and tables were fixed. In our design, we want to implement ergonomic furniture that will feature mid-back rest, armrests. It will have padding. It will also be height and tilt adjusting, as well as mobile. There will be additions of outlets to the tables, and some tables will feature height adjustability. So we, to begin the design process of our layouts, we did some technical research and some research on best practices. We started with capacity calculations through facilities planning. We know that students typically need around a 6 by 6 foot area to study in. We then took that and divided that into the total study area, square foot, and then came out with a max capacity of 212 seats for all 8 study lounges. We also found that this is severely lacking. It's only around 75% of this number. And then the workstations, there's only about 60 workstations total in this entire, in all 8 study lounges, which was alarming because a lot of students referenced this was their preferred study method. We also found that flexible workstations and ergonomic workstations were the easiest way to meet the changing needs of the students. STEM students often work individually and in groups, so providing flexible furniture was kind of key for them. Also, including mobile whiteboards is a collaborative tool that was not provided to us previously in the study areas and will be a valuable addition for collaborative work and group work. We also found that mobile print stations could be a valuable addition to students because currently there's only one space in the building to print, and that is on the west wing. The addition of mobile print stations in the east wing would cut down on the strain in the computer lab, as well as cut down on the distance traveled by students each time they need to print.
So before we implemented our layouts, we wanted to do some initial data collection in addition to what we had done before we started the project. So we released an initial survey, and we had asked students of those respondents what were the uses for the lounges that they currently did. And so we found that primarily they used the lounges for individual study, and then secondly, they used it for group study. And then we found that even some students reported that they even used it for napping. So we also wanted to know what of the current furniture, since there were so many different varieties, did the students use in the study lounges, and we found that a majority of the students reported that they used the rectangular table and the rolling chair combination over a lot of the other variations that were available to them. So this is what we had decided that we were going to implement into our updated layouts. We also wanted to figure out what issues had they been facing since they've been using the study lounges. As I kind of addressed earlier, there have not been a lot of updates made to the areas since opening in 2003. So some of the issues that they had reported were that they did not have enough tables and chairs, and what the current furniture was to them was quote unquote bad furniture. Sorry. So we wanted to figure out the issues that they had reported on the previous slide were the issues as to why they were not using the study lounges more. So we asked the students if improvements to those study lounges were made, would they actually use the study lounges more? And we found that 90% reported that they would indeed use the study lounges more if those improvements were made. So we wanted to figure out kind of a baseline, what the overall rating for the study lounges were according to the students. And we broke it up by East Wing and West Wing since we would be addressing the East Wing. So initially, the West Wing had actually scored higher overall than the East Wing. And so this is what we will use to compare when we make our improvements to see if they were actually improvements later on.
So we had a lot of information to digest. So we started the brainstorming process for these layouts after we implemented the preliminary surveys. We did 2 layouts for all 8 spaces, one layout for all the upper level lounges and then one layout for all the lower level lounges. And that was due to the similarities in dimensions and then also the similarities in the foot traffic and noise levels. And then we also had specific needs of the students that we were targeting. And just a brief overview of those needs again is including need-based study zones, maximizing the capacity of the room, providing optimal groupings, and also providing flexible and ergonomic furniture. It became very apparent to include the most value-added project that we could. We needed to do 2 plans, a not funded plan, which we actually implemented into the East Wing as discussed. That's just 4 layouts, and that was used with the furniture and resources that WMU had on hand, and that was implemented back in February. And then we also did a funded plan, which we built off of the not funded plan and created basically the optimized layouts, and then put that into a presentation and presented that to the associate dean so he could use that for future use when funding becomes available. And that will also be discussed later on in the presentation. So furthering the brainstorming of our design, we found that it was a need to kind of break the study areas into 3 zones. That's where the students kind of spend most of their time, and that's in a collaborative, social, and individual learning zone. The collaborative learning zone is for group work. This is where the larger mobile tables will be, mobile chairs, and then also some collaboration tools like the whiteboards that we discussed. The social learning zone is for individuals or groups, and this is kind of a relaxing or a recharging zone for breaks in between studying or breaks in between classes. The individual study zone is for individuals or small groups that are focusing on more self-directed studying, and all 3 of these zones are going to be featured in our final layout design. So this is the final layout design that was implemented for the not funded plan. This is in the lower levels. It features the collaborative learning zone in the front of the room and the social learning zone in the back of the room. That's where the couches and the chairs will be, are now. And then also it was a huge goal of ours because it was referenced in our research and our preliminary surveying that there just wasn't enough seats. So we used the additional furniture that WMU had on hand and kind of filled the capacity of the room, which we calculated to be 30 seats. The noise level for these areas is going to be moderate just due to the group studying areas, and also there's a lot more foot traffic on the lower levels, as well as the noise levels for a social learning zone is typically going to be higher. This is the final layout for the individual or for the upper level zone. This is featuring the individual learning zone basically in the entire layout. with a recharging zone in the back for students to be able to take breaks between their self-directed study or in between classes. It was also another goal to maximize the capacity for these spaces too, because there were some rooms that only had one workstation and then the rest was just couches. So we put a lot more tables and chairs in these areas, and the max capacity for this zone was around 23. And we also intend the noise level for this area to be pretty low, just due to the lower foot traffic of the upper levels, and the room size is a lot smaller. So this is a picture of what was actually implemented back in February. This is again the east wing, and this is what a lower level lounge would look like. The collaborative zone is featured in the front. We put as many couches as we had on hand in the back to kind of feature the social learning zone. Ideally, we'd have one or two more, but we made do with what we had on hand. And then this is an example of an upper level lounge. If you remember the picture earlier on, there was only one table in the upper level lounge that we showed you. So we, added 4 times that, and then included the individual recharging zone in the back.
So after we implemented our layouts, we again wanted to get some data so that we could actually determine whether or not the improvements we made were beneficial. Excuse me. So we again released a survey to students, and so we separated it by East Wing and West Wing. And so we wanted to figure out if students actually noticed that changes were made to the layouts of the study lounges. And so of the students that reported yes for the East Wing, we wanted to see what of those improvements did they actually notice. And so the things that we implemented and tried to address in our initial layouts, again, with what we had, as Sophia had mentioned earlier. And so students have mentioned that they did notice more tables, a better layout, more chairs, and then less of the short cushion chairs, which were those little chairs that you kind of saw throughout the layouts of the photos we had showed you previously. So we wanted to figure out if improvements were going to be made, again, as we were planning for our optimal layouts that Sophia will show you a little later on in this presentation, what the most important upgrades would be in their opinion. And so they found, or they reported that they wanted more tables and chairs, individual or private study pods, as well as more outlets. So again, we wanted to figure out what the overall rating students felt for the West Wing and East Wing study lounges. So previously the West Wing had actually scored higher than the East Wing, but after we made improvements to the East Wing, it had scored higher than the West Wing overall. And the overall rating for the East Wing from before we made improvements to after increased from an overall rating of 6 to an overall rating of 7. So then we wanted to figure out what issues that they may be facing while using the study areas. We recognized that we weren't able to solve every problem that they may face while using these study areas. And so the most reported issue for both the East and West Wing was so that there were not enough tables. And so we had some work sampling done, and we found that only about 30% of the workstations have been being utilized. And we found that the reason for this was that students would go to a workstation like this, and instead of separating the tables so that they would just maybe use one table for themselves for an individual study session, they were leaving it as they found it, and then nobody would feel comfortable to go and sit at this workstation with them. So this would kind of monopolize 4 chairs instead of 1 chair and 2 tables instead of 1 table. So there was a shortage of tables. And so just so you know that it's not just one person, when we took that initial photo, almost every station in that lounge was facing the same issue. So that, again, is why we had the overall issue of only about 30% of the workstations being utilized.
So we took our information from our post-implementation surveying and work sampling and built off of our original layout. The zones are still featured similarly, but for this design, we're definitely going to maximize the capacity of the space. There's not going to be a chair or couch missing in these areas. We also added individual social learning zone areas in the back, which is going to be featured by bistro chairs and high tables. As Carly discussed, we implemented modular tables into this. So each of the tables now only features 2 seats, but can be combined in the lower levels at least to up to 6. And then we also included mobile whiteboards for group work, and then upgraded all the furniture in each of the zones. And then the most valuable addition to the upper lounge is we included stand-to-sit desks for the individual self-directed study, and that will sit 1 to 2 students. So here is what the furniture will look like in the lower level layouts. This is the collaborative area. It's going to have an ergonomic chair, and then some mobile modular tables that seat 2, but will be combined to up to 6. And then also the mobile whiteboards and a mobile print station will be featured in the lower level lounges. This is a picture of what the furniture will look like for the social learning zone, which is featured in our lower level lounges. It will have large comfortable couches and large comfortable chairs, as well as a center table. Furthering the the social learning zone will have bistro tables and high chairs in the back on either side of the couches, and this is also featured in the lower level. This is what the upper level lounge furniture will look like. This is just the individual learning zone, and then also the individual recharging zone. So this will feature the same ergonomic chairs that you saw in the lower levels, as well as the stand-to-sit desks, and then a large individual recharging area called a cabana couch in the back right. So what does this all cost? The total cost for this total renovation would be around $300,000. That includes the installation. It also includes rewiring for additional outlets for students, and then a complete renovation of the breakout rooms. We kind of divided the cost of each space into the upper level, lower level, and the breakout room cost. For installation of furniture and rewiring to add additional outlets, the total cost comes to around $30,000 for the upper level for each upper level area, and then $32,000 for a lower level area, and around $10,000 for a complete breakout room renovation. So some project recap of what you all just heard. We identified a clear need for this project just through observations and a lot of research that we did. And then we took that information and designed our layouts, and then we actually tested those layouts into the East Wing. We went back to the students for surveying and asked them, what else do you want to see? We made adjustments to those layouts, and then we designed an optimal layout presentation and presented that to the Associate Dean, and now he has that for future use when funding becomes available to the college.
This is a summary of our references from throughout the project. This includes references to the reports on the studies that have been done on the study areas previously, as well as our background and technical research that we performed, and references to all the furniture that Sophia has just presented to you in the previous slides. So we wanted to thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation, and we wanted to open the floor now for any questions you may have.
Time for a question, if anyone has one.
I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but after you update the layout, did you do another survey to see how it went out?
So we did one layout implementation, and then we put a survey out after that. And that was the only 2 surveys we did. We only had time to implement one layout because we did not have funding for an additional layout.
Very good. Thank you very much.